Hello everyone, in this video we will be discussing UPSC Mathematics paper 2021, paper 1. Specifically we will be discussing section A, some selected questions of section A. Let's first look at the weightage of different topics that was covered. So section A, now we are discussing paper 1. Section A, the first topic is linear algebra. Then there is calculus and analytic geometry. The weightage for these three topics was 70, 75 and 55 respectively. Section B, which comprises of ordinary differential equations, vector calculus and the physics portion. The weightage for these three topics was 70, 60 and 70 respectively. So in this video we will be catering to section A, and we will concentrate on linear algebra and calculus. Geometry came for a lesser weightage and the questions were pretty much straightforward. So let's discuss linear algebra. First, a few remarks about what were the kind of questions that came in linear algebra. So there are basically three categories in which the questions can be divided. The first is vector spaces. Now from vector spaces there was no theorem that was asked, and the questions that were asked mainly were about null space and range, or rank, which is the dimension of the range, and nullity, which has been the norm for quite some years now. So every year there is at least one question from this concept. So if you know it really well, then it was easier to attempt the questions from vector spaces. The second is matrices, and in this I am also including a system of linear equations, because that also boils down to matrices only ultimately. Now in this topic there was a basic question of linear equations which was quite easy to solve, but in matrices specifically my observation is that you have to concentrate on matrices and type of matrices a lot. So one has to know the type of matrices. So what is a symmetric matrix, for example? What is skew symmetric matrix? What is a Hermitian matrix? What is a skew Hermitian matrix? What is an orthogonal matrix, etc., etc. So the different kind of matrices that we have diagonal matrices, scalar matrices, symmetric matrices, etc., etc. One has to really know the definition well enough, otherwise you will not be in a position to even start attempting the question. Specifically this year there was a question which comprised of symmetric as well as orthogonal matrices. Now every year mostly these two topics are the ones which are covered in linear algebra, and one more extra topic which sort of was highlighted in this was from functional analysis. Now functional analysis is the higher version of linear algebra, and specifically here we need to know, say, the definition of a unit column matrix. So there was a question, I'll tell you which question we are talking about. Question number 2B. I'm referring to question number 2B of this year, which had the requirement of you knowing what is a unit column matrix, also symmetric and orthogonal. So there was a question which was made of the mixture of all these three concepts, And when you come to unit column matrix, one has to know what, so column matrix I think everyone knows, but you have to know what is the meaning of a unit column matrix. So when I discuss this question, I will highlight how these topics were important, but let me repeat my observation once more. In linear algebra, there are three kind of questions that are, three kind of topics that are being covered nowadays. Vector spaces, which mostly caters to null space, range, also eigenvalues, eigenvectors. Then matrices, one has to really know the different kind of matrices that we have and how their eigenvalues, for example, are related. When you have different kind of matrices, how are their eigenvalues, the nature of those eigenvalues going to change. And what they are touching upon is functional analysis, which I would say that for future reference, you must know the process of orthogonalization. In specific, there is a theorem called Gram-Schmidt's process, and you must concentrate on what is the meaning of a unit matrix, which we will be discussing in the next slide. Okay, let's write down what is given. So question number 2b, define an n cross n matrix A which is I minus 2 U transpose. That is how the definition has been given. So A is defined to be I minus 2 U transpose, where U is given to be a unit column matrix. Okay, so we'll discuss what this really means. Now, two things I would like to highlight here. First, there is U transpose written here with a dot in between, which we think of as multiplication, but this is actually the dot product of the vector U with its transpose, and that actually helps you to also understand the definition of what is a unit column matrix. So let's look at U. It is a column matrix, we understand, and the size is going to be n cross n because A is given to be a n cross n matrix. So U is going to specifically look like U11, U21, dot till say UN1. This is a column matrix. So column matrix basically means there is a single column, and since there had to be n rows, why n rows? Because if you look at the right hand side, it has to give rise to a n cross n matrix. So identity needs to be n cross n. And if I take U to be like this, then there is n rows and one column, which is n cross 1, and U transpose in this case, transpose of a matrix will look like this, which is a single row and n columns, so it is actually 1 cross n. Now if you try and put in the sizes of U and U transpose, so U transpose, the size of U is n cross 1, the size of U transpose is 1 cross n. So we can multiply n cross 1 with 1 cross n, and the resultant will be a n cross n matrix, which is perfect because we want the right hand side to be standing for a n cross n matrix. So that's why you have to introduce U in order to understand what is happening. So this is a column matrix, its transpose is going to be a row matrix, and the product is going to in return give you a n cross n matrix. That brings us to a very crucial question, that what is the meaning of a unit matrix? A matrix is said to be, a column matrix is said to be unit if and only if its norm comes out to be equal to 1. Its norm has to come out to be equal to 1. Now what is the meaning of norm? This is the concept of norm. But even if you don't want to introduce norm, you have to still know what is the meaning of a unit column matrix. See, if you multiply U with U transpose, we get a n cross n matrix. But let us see what we get if we multiply U transpose with U. So what is the size of U transpose? It is 1 cross n, and the size of U is n cross 1. If I multiply a 1 cross n matrix with a n cross 1 matrix, the resultant is going to be a 1 cross 1 matrix, which is actually just a number. And if this comes out to be equal to 1, if U transpose U comes out to be equal to 1, then we say that U is a unit column matrix. So the definition of a unit column matrix which is pertinent to understanding this question and its solution, is that U is a unit column matrix. That means U transpose U should come out to be equal to 1. Also, U transpose U is like the length of the vector. So when we come to norm, if you study this concept of norm a little bit more in detail, you realize that U transpose U is actually just the length of that particular vector. Okay. So for example, if I look at, let's look at 1, 0. Okay, this is also a unit column matrix, because if you calculate, if let's call this as, we know this is E1, right, because the first element of the orthogonal basis that you have. Now E1 transpose, if I calculate, it will be 1, 0, and if you multiply 1, 0 with 1, 0, and when I multiply, I mean by taking like a dot product. So I am actually taking dot product of this vector with this particular vector. The answer is coming out to be 1. So 1, 0 is an example of, another example of a unit column matrix. So I hope this concept is clear. Now let's specifically come to the question that they asked us. So let's have a look at this. A is given to be like this, where U is given to be a unit column matrix. Now what did the question say? The question apparently has 4 parts. It says, the first part says, examine if A is symmetric. So let's write down A again so that we use it again and again. This is I minus 2 U transpose, where U is a unit column matrix. That means we concluded that U transpose U comes out to be equal to 1. So this is what is given now in this question. First part, there are 4 parts to it. First part says, is A symmetric? So like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, it's important to know what are the different type of matrices. Otherwise, you don't know what you have to show. It's very crucial for you to understand what is a symmetric matrix. And what is the definition of a symmetric matrix? A matrix A is said to be symmetric if and only if A transpose comes out to be equal to A. If a matrix, its transpose comes out to be itself, then it is said to be a symmetric matrix. So we have to check whether this A that is given to us is symmetric or not. So let us consider A transpose, which is I minus 2 U transpose, the transpose of this. Now I hope you remember that if you have, let's write down the reviews here. If you have A plus B transpose, then this is same as A transpose plus B transpose. Also if you have AB transpose, it will be B transpose A transpose. The order gets reversed when you are multiplying, but in addition and subtraction it remains the same. So when I open this up, what do I get? I transpose minus 2 U transpose and the transpose of this. So what is transpose of identity matrix? It will just be I, because if you change the rows and columns, nothing changes here. 2 is a constant, so it just comes out. U transpose, I apply the product because you're taking the transpose. So it will become U transpose transpose into U transpose. Now transpose of transpose will be the same thing back again. So it will become I minus 2 U transpose. And so right now we are just opening up A transpose. We have kind of kept in backside what we wanted to show, but once you have simplified it as much as you can, now you look at what you wanted to show. We wanted to check whether A transpose is A or not. We have simplified A transpose to an extent, and now if you see, isn't this same as A? This I minus 2 U transpose is nothing but equal to A. So A transpose is coming out to be equal to A. Therefore the answer to the first question is yes, this matrix is a symmetric matrix. Okay, so this is symmetric. So it was an easy question to do, but provided you know the meaning of a symmetric matrix. Second part to the same question is examine if A is orthogonal. So let's look at the second part now. Second part says, is A orthogonal? Now, what is the meaning of a matrix being orthogonal? So a matrix is said to be orthogonal if and only if AA transpose comes out to be identity. Said to be orthogonal if AA transpose is identity. Now you should always, like we discussed in the previous slide also, try and gauge the size of a matrix to see whether the equation is even making sense or not. So please see, A is a n cross n matrix. You take the transpose, it will also be n cross n. And when you multiply one n cross n matrix with another n cross n matrix, the answer is again O. It's always easier to know the sizes of different matrices in picture. It helps you to simplify it further. So you have to see if AA transpose is identity or not. So what do? We consider the left hand side and hope that when we open this up, you get identity. Now, a lot of questions which have subparts to them are put in such a way that each part requires a hint from the previous part. Like from here, if you see AA transpose, well, we can open up A transpose and simplify it, but if you pause and see, we have said that A transpose is nothing but A. So when you're considering AA transpose from the previous part, this just becomes A dot A, which is nothing but A square actually. And this becomes I minus 2UU transpose into I minus 2UU transpose. So you can take just the whole square also, it doesn't matter. Now when you open this up, identity into identity will just give you identity, minus this into I and this into I gives you, combining the terms we get 4UU transpose plus 4UU transpose into another UU transpose here. Right? Now again, I'm not bothered about what I want to show, I'm just simplifying the terms and seeing what I'm going to get. So I minus 4UU transpose plus. Now if you pay attention, this is UU transpose, UU transpose. We can always use associativity, which tells you that you can put the brackets anywhere without changing the order of the elements. So I'm just combining U transpose and U together. And if you pay attention again, here this was U is a unit matrix. We use it here, so U transpose U just becomes 1. So what are we left with? We are just left with 4UU transpose. Now, aren't these two terms just the same? So they cancel out with each other and the answer comes out to be equal to I, which is what we wanted to show. So the answer to this question, is A orthogonal, is again a big yes. Yes, this matrix is symmetric as well as orthogonal. So anyway, again, when you open up the steps, not so difficult, but crucial to know what is orthogonal, crucial to know what was the meaning of unit. So if you know the basics well enough, then this is okay to do. Okay, let's proceed. Now the third part. Again, the third part says, I'll just copy down the question, says that show that trace of A is n minus 2. Again, you can attempt this question only when you know the meaning of trace. So basics of matrices, once more it gets accentuated that basics of matrices is very, very crucial. So what is the meaning of trace? Trace means actually the sum of all the diagonal entries. In a matrix, when you add up all the diagonal entries, that number that you get is known as the trace. Here we have to actually find what trace of A is. We have to show that it's n minus 2. So let's write down A again. It was I minus 2UU transpose. And we have to calculate the trace of this particular matrix. So first, a very simple observation. You can easily prove this. It's 2 minutes work. What is trace of A plus B going to be? You know how you add two matrices? Component wise, each entry corresponding is added to another entry here. So this is obviously equal to nothing but trace of A plus trace of B. Please verify this result, it's just a 2 minutes work. So here when we come to trace of A, this will be like, okay, let's denote trace by TR for short. So it's trace of this quantity. This is same as trace of identity minus trace of 2UU transpose. Okay. Now what is trace of identity matrix? Trace of identity matrix, what will it be? So identity matrix, if you just look at anytime a question is on n cross n matrix, if you want to really visualize it well, you can put n equal to 2, 3 and see what is happening. So if I say let me take a 2 cross 2 matrix, okay. Now, what is the trace? It's going to be the sum of the diagonal entries. So the trace of identity in this case is going to come out to be 2. If identity was a 3 cross 3 matrix that you were considering, then there would have been 3 ones on the diagonal. So the trace would have come out to be equal to 3. So in general, what is trace of identity matrix? It is n if I is n cross n. If I is n cross n matrix, then its trace will come out to be equal to n. So let's substitute that here. N minus 2 times, because 2 is just a constant, out of a matrix you can take it out. Maybe we can write it out also as another result that we can try and prove. The trace of alpha times A, alpha is a scalar number being multiplied with the entire matrix, will be nothing but alpha times trace of A. So this will just become trace of UU transpose. Okay. Now that is what I could simplify it to. So I look at what I wanted to show. Fortunately, this question was show that the trace is this. So we already know what the answer is. It has to be n minus 2. Now haven't we got n already? So, and we've got a minus 2. We have to only worry about what this quantity is. And by looking at what we want to show, we also know that it must come out to be equal to 1. So we have to only try and see how does it come out to be equal to 1. So the whole question boils down to why is trace of this 1? I'm putting a question mark here because we are still trying to figure that out. If we are able to show that trace is 1, then the answer will come out to be what we want to show. So we'll just concentrate on this. So, okay. Prove these results that we had stated here for your better understanding of what is happening. Now, let's just figure out trace of UU transpose. On the previous slide, I had introduced, let's go back to the previous slide where I have introduced here. U was this column matrix and U transpose was this row matrix. Okay. So we have already introduced the notations. We'll just copy that down. So U was nothing but we're just copying down U. U was nothing but U11, U21 dot 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 till UN1, and U transpose was U11, U21, UN1. So what is U into U transpose going to be? Again, figuring out the size is quite helpful. The size of U is n rows and 1 column. The size of U transpose 1 row and n columns. So when I multiply a n cross 1 matrix with another 1 cross n matrix, the answer is going to be a n cross n matrix. The answer when I multiply U with U transpose will be a full n cross n matrix. And what will it be like? Okay, so let's multiply this with this. It's of course easier to write down here. This is what is UU transpose. So I'm just opening up this now. So when you multiply, what do you get? U11 square. Okay, what is the second entry going to be? It's going to be U11. The second entry is going to be U11 gets multiplied with, what is the second entry here? It is nothing but U21. So into U21, etc., etc. By the way, since we are interested in only the trace, I am only bothered about what the diagonal entries are going to be. So if you open it up specifically only for diagonal entries, then this will become U21 square, U31 square, and the last diagonal entry will be UN1 square. What we are interested in trace of this. So trace of UU transpose is U11 square plus dot 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 till UN1 square. It is U11 square it is U11 square plus dot 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 till UN1 square. Now what is this? Let's go back to the slide where we had introduced all these. So see, now what was given here? We had concluded that U transpose U is nothing but 1. So if you look at your U transpose and you multiply it with U, please multiply U transpose with U in the expanded version. Multiply this with this. What are we going to get? We are getting U11 square plus U21 square plus dot 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 till UN1 square. And because it was a unit matrix, we have already concluded that the answer of this is going to come out to be equal to 1. So if this quantity is nothing but 1, if you go back to where we are right now, here, u11 square, dot 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 till un1 square, from the previous slide I just showed you that this will come out to be equal to 1. So again, if you introduce u properly, then it is easier to sort of just conclude that this is 1, and therefore if you put it, the answer comes out to be n minus 2 as was required. There is a fourth part also to this question, which I'll leave for you. Let's just see what that part is. We'll just write down. In particular, they are saying kindly find A, which is 3 cross 3, if U is given to be a specific column matrix like 1 by 3, 2 by 3, 2 by 3. Now this is quite simple because of the definition of A. It was identity, also of size 3 cross 3, minus 2 U transpose. So one can just plug in U and U transpose here and get A. So that you can finish the calculations yourself. But why have I bothered to write the question is because let us once again revise the concept of, is it a unit column matrix? So it is a column matrix I can make out. To be a unit column matrix, I need to find out its transpose. 1 by 3, 2 by 3, 2 by 3. What is the size of this? 1 row and 3 columns. The size of this is 3 rows and 1 column. The unit matrix was U transpose U. That means you multiply 1 by 3, 2 by 3, 2 by 3. This is only for your practice, okay? They haven't asked us to show it. But for the definition to be valid, it should make sense, no? So we're just calculating it. So 1 by 3 into 1 by 3, which is 1 by 9, plus this will become 4 by 9, plus 2 by 3 into 2 by 3, which is also a 4 by 9. So what does this become? Since the denominator is same, this becomes 1. So this is what a unit column matrix is. So just in case the definition doesn't strike you or something, you can read all the 4 parts, and the 4th part gives you a good idea about why is it being called a unit column matrix. Okay, so U transpose U should come out to be equal to 1. So this was a 20 marker and 4 parts. All the parts are very simple to do, provided you know all the basic definitions of symmetric, orthogonal, trace, unit column matrix in particular. Okay. Question number 1A. Now let's read out the question. Consider the set V of all n cross n real magic squares. So V is given to be set of all n cross n magic squares. Again, before we even read the question ahead, we must know the meaning of a magic square. You know what is a magic square? School children, even primary school children, are taught the concept of a magic square. But if you don't know the definition, again, if you have forgotten the definition, then it's going to be impossible to try and attempt this question. So this paper specifically had a lot of remember the definition of a magic square type kind of questions. So what is a magic square? Okay. Now let me tell you a magic square by taking, say, an example. Not a numerical example, but just to explain the concept. Let me take A to be a 3 cross 3 matrix. So a 3 cross 3 matrix in general, I can just write dots, but let me introduce this as first row, first column. So first row, second column. Okay. A31, A32, and there is a A33. So a magic square is a square matrix where the sum of all the row entries is a constant k, which is same as the sum of the second row and sum of the third row also. That means all the rows elements should add up to a constant k, and all the column entries should also add up to k. So A11 plus A21 plus A31 should also be the constant k. Similarly, the second column, if you add up these values, the answer should come out to be k, and here also the answer should come out to be equal to k. Not just that, the diagonal entries should also add up to k. So basically A11 plus A22 plus A33 should also be k, etc., etc., etc. So there are so many conditions on what a magic square is going to look like. Now obviously if I'm visualizing a 3 cross 3 matrix, there are so many equations. You can very well imagine what is going to happen with a n cross n magic square. It's going to be huge in size. In particular, first I would like you to work on n equal to 3. Okay. Now I'll attach a detailed solution to this question at the end of the video, but first try and understand that these kind of questions have been the norm for some years now. How come? Because see, they'll put some conditions. So if you remember the kind of questions that they have asked, I'm introducing the symbol W because I want to accentuate a point, just bear with me. Suppose I say that W is a subset of, say, R cube. So it comprises of those ABCs such that A plus B plus C comes out to be equal to, say, 0. So there is a general element of R cube is going to belong to W only when this condition is satisfied. The questions that have come in the past are, show that this is a, say, a subspace. How is it related to our question? They say show that this V is a vector space. What we wanted to show here is that show V is a vector space. Now, to show something is a vector space, we have about 10 properties, and some of them are pretty lengthy to write, like associativity, or even if you write down commutativity, it's not going to be very simple to express the answer. So please, and this is a 10 marker, since this is question number 1A, this was only for 10 marks. For 10 marks, writing down 10 properties of a vector space is going to be huge, because it's not a small thing, and in one page you have to cover up the answer. So the trick in this question, the more important thing here is, we don't show it as a vector space. Let us try and show V is a subspace of the set of all n cross n matrices. Set of all n cross n matrices, we can assume easily that it is a vector space, like we can take it for granted. We know it is a vector space. Just write that down. In fact, the general notation is MNR, M for matrices. This n tells you the size, n cross n, and the entries are real. Okay, so MNR we know is going to be a vector space. Please don't try and bother to show this is a vector space. Write down one line in the beginning of the answer that we will rather show it is a subspace. And to be a subspace, you know, we have to only bother about 3 properties. So whereas in a vector space you have to bother to write down 10, here out of those 10 we have to only write down 3. So let us revise what was the definition of a subspace. We will have to show 3 things only. We will have to show 0 belongs to V. That means the identity with respect to addition belongs to V. We have to show that V is closed under addition. That means if you take A and B coming from V, you will have to show that their sum also comes from V. And the third is going to be closed under scalar multiplication. So if you take one A coming from V and alpha coming from the field under which you are working, you have to show that alpha A belongs to V. So first of all, because it's a 10 marker, and because this is much more a compact and a smart way of showing something as a vector space, we know every subspace is a vector space. So in order to show this is a vector space, we'll rather show that this is a subspace of MNR. So in the beginning you quote one line, we know MNR is a vector space. Let us show this is a subspace by only catering to these 3. Now before you look at my solution, please try this result. Please try to write, I'll write down a general result. You try and do it for n equal to 3. That means you take general 3 cross 3 matrices, which are becoming a magic square. That means their sum is a constant, like we discussed, and try and show all these things, okay? Because if you look at, for example, 0 matrix, so if I write down all zeros here, then is this a magic square? Is this a magic square? The answer is yes, because all the rows add up to 0, all the columns are also adding up to 0, and even the diagonal entries, the sum comes out to be equal to 0. So 0 belongs to V is going to be trivial even in case of n cross n. Now try and do this property and this property in specific only for n equal to 3 to get a good idea, and for n in general I will attach the solution at the end of the video. So takeaway from this question is that instead of showing it as a vector space, show it as a subspace, and that you should definitely know the definition of what is a magic square. Okay, so let's go ahead. Now let's discuss question number 1B. So now let's discuss question number 1b, which says that there is a T given to us. T is defined from M to R to M to R. It is defined as T of A, where A is a matrix, is equal to BA, where they have given us the specific B, 1 minus 1 minus 4, 4. Okay. The question says, let M to R be the vector space of all 2 cross 2 real matrices. Let B be the given matrix. Suppose T from M to R is defined like this. And it's not just defined like this, it's given that this is a linear transformation. So we don't have to bother about it being a linear transformation. We have to find rank and nullity. I'll just do this question, but I would like to mention that there was another question on nullity or null space that has been asked. This is a very similar question. This is question number 3b, which was for about 15 marks, is also a question on null space. So if you cater to this, then that also becomes easier. This is of course question number 1b, so it's a 10 marker. Okay. Now why am I discussing this question? Because you have to pay attention and see that this is just a 10 marker. Okay. And there is a further question also. There is another part. Find A such that it maps to the null matrix. Okay. Now for 10 marks, if you try and do a solution which takes you up to 3 pages, it is of no use because there is limited space given. So why I am discussing this question is to highlight that in order to find rank and nullity, the question does not say find the range and the null space. So the definition of rank first. What is rank? Rank is nothing but dimension of the range. Okay. And what is nullity? Nullity is the dimension of the null space. The question just says find rank and nullity. It does not say find the range and hence find the rank. That could also be a question. Find the null space and hence find the nullity. That is at least going to be a 15 or a 20 marker because you have to find them out specifically and then figure out what their dimensions is going to be. But this is a 10 marker and therefore please find only one out of them. Just find rank or find nullity. We'll discuss both. You choose whatever you like best. Just find any one. Okay. And after that, so I'm giving you a 10 marker solution first. That we'll find one of them, we'll find rank or nullity and then use Sylvester's law, which is also known as the dimension theorem. What does it say? It says that dimension of RT plus dimension of NT is nothing but dimension of the domain which is V. So if you can find out any one of them, suppose we know this already, then how do we find this? By using this law. Dimension of V, V is the domain here. Here the domain and codomain are both M to R. So as a remark, first write down what is dimension of M to R. M to R ka dimension 2 means it's a 2 cross 2 matrices. So all 2 cross 2 matrices, the dimension is going to be 4. In fact, the general result is dimension of M cross N is Mn. So this 2 basically means 2 cross 2, therefore dimension is 4. So if I can find out dimension of RT, I already know this is 4, I'll be able to find out dimension of NT, which is nullity. Or if you can find out this, then again by this equation you can find out this. Don't bother to find both because it will be very, very time consuming, it will waste a lot of space. More than the time issue, it is space issue. So we'll just try and find any one of them in the exam. Here I will show you both so that you have a good idea as to if the question was framed. The same question, I can have it like a 20 marker where I say find the range and hence find rank, find the null space and hence find nullity, or I can say verify Sylvester's law. That also is actually same as just finding the dimensions separately. So we'll find both But in the exam, like I said, you only please find one. Now, first I'll try and find rank. Rank is dimension of RT. Now, there is a very important and a very simple two-liner proof I'll attach again at the end of the video as a remark. RT, there is a result which tells you that if T is a map from V to W, okay, then first of all range is here, you know, RT is a subspace of W. It is contained in W, and it is not just contained, it is a subspace. Very simple to prove this result, like I said, if beta is a basis of V, then RT is nothing but span of T beta. A very simple, like I said, 2-3 line proof, but it's not used very frequently by students. And I wonder why, because this is going to really help you to find out the range and therefore the rank. That if you can just figure out a basis of V and take the image of that basis under T, then that set that you get is a spanning set. It is a spanning set. So out of them, if you can choose the maximal linearly independent set, then it will become a basis, and the number of elements in the basis will then give rise to dimension. You see how what a powerful result this is. It helps you to find what RT looks like. It helps you to find an independent set of RT. Therefore, you can conclude what the basis is going to be, and you can then also conclude what the dimension is going to be. All this comes only if you can figure out what is a basis of the domain. So, our domain was M to R. So, our question was T was a map from M to R to M to R. So, what is the standard basis of M to R? M to R 2 cross 2 matrices. Dimension is 4, 1, 0, 1 at one position and everywhere else 0. And 1 by 1 if you do that. Yeah. So, the standard basis of M to R is basically these matrices. They are also sometimes denoted by E11. This one is called E12. This is known as E21 and E22. Some books also call them like this because of the positioning of 1. See, 1 is positioned here at the 1-1 level, 1 is positioned here at 1-2 level, and therefore the name, okay. But this is what the standard basis looks like. So, you know, this theorem will be as simple as just calculating T of all of them. What is the first entry we have? 1, 0, 0, 0. Just find T of each one of them, okay. The answers of these will be the spanning set of RT. They'll all span. So, this comes out to be, I have opened it up already, it will be 1 minus 4, 0, 0. Sorry. This is 1 minus 4, 0, 0. The second answer comes out to be 0, 0. Please verify these. Minus 1, 4, 0, 0. And the last comes out to be 0, 0, minus 1, 4. How am I calculating this? If you go back to the previous slide, we had T of B, or T of A was defined to be BA, and B was that matrix, right? This B was nothing but, what was B? 1, minus 1, minus 4, 4. All I am doing therefore is multiplying this matrix with each one of them in order to get these answers. And the result I was quoting, RT is span of T beta, that means these 4 together form a spanning set of RT. But if you want to conclude what is the basis of it, you have to choose the independent ones. Now let's see, are all of them independent? By just looking at them, what are the independent ones therefore we have? The independent ones are going to be, you choose this one, 1 minus 4, 0, 0. Okay, you can leave out then the third one, and suppose I choose the second, you can leave out the fourth. Therefore, what do we get? We get that we get that, I'm just quoting the result now, that RT will be nothing but span of, first you can write down all 4 of them, but then you delete the ones which are dependent, and these, if you see, are clearly independent of each other because they are not scalar multiples of each other. So RT is spanned by these two, also these two are clearly linearly independent, therefore they constitute a basis. If the question had specifically said find a basis, we have also zeroed down on what the basis is going to be, but we were of course in this question only interested in dimension of RT, which is the number of elements in the basis, and therefore the answer comes out to be 2. And if you go back to the previous slide where I told you how you're going to actually cater to this, if you look at this, if you found out dimension of RT as 2 and you know dimension of V is 4, immediately we can conclude the dimension of NT will also be equal to 2. Okay? But like I said, I'll discuss NT also because there are 2 questions based on this. So to find nullity, please write down nullity is nothing but dimension of NT somewhere, and then write down what NT is. So NT will comprise of all those matrices A such that T of A is nothing but the 0 matrix, right? So NT is all those A's such that T of A is going to be the 0 matrix. So all those A's such that, what is the definition of TA again? It is BA. So 1 minus 1 minus 4 4 times, let me introduce A as A, B, C, D. Let's say this is a matrix A, is nothing but the 0 matrix. Okay. So we are first finding out null space, then we'll calculate the dimension and conclude what nullity is. So open up these equations please. So it is all those 2 cross 2 matrices of the form A, B, C, D is such that, what is the first equation you are going to get? A minus C is 0. Okay. The second is B minus D is 0. Minus 4A plus 4C is 0. And minus 4B plus 4D is 0. Okay. Now, are these equations all linearly independent? Clearly no. Just look at the level of complexity of the equations. It's quite simple. A minus C is equal to 0 and this one is minus 4A plus 4C equal to 0. Of course, if you just get rid of the 4, minus 4 in fact, you get the same equation back. And the same thing is valid for these two. That means you have to cater to only 2 equations. So null space basically is all those matrices of the form A, B, C, D where A minus C has to be 0, the difference of these two has to be 0, and the difference of B and D has to be 0, which means what? A is nothing but C and B is nothing but D, right? So what is a null space? The null space comprises of all matrices of the form, if I write A here, B, instead of C I can write A, instead of D I can write a B. So it is all the matrices of the form A, B, B, where A and B are real numbers. This is what null space is. If the question specifically said find null space, then this is where you will stop. It said nullity, so what do you do from here? What we do from here is, okay, let's continue here. Okay, this set, please open this up and write it as a linear combination. So what is NT? NT is basically all matrices of the form A times 1 1 0 0 plus B times 0 0 1 1. So null space is all matrices which are a linear combination of this matrix and this matrix. Again, if the question said find the basis of null space, then these two together form the basis of null space. But we were only interested in nullity. So basis will comprise of 2 elements. Therefore nullity, which is also denoted by nu t, is nothing but 2. You can easily see this from Sylvester's law also if you go back, and if you look at, yeah, see, if you had this dimension of RT, we calculated 2 and this was 4, so this was coming out to be 2. Alternatively, you can calculate this and get 2, you will automatically get dimension of RT. So there are many ways of doing it. You have to keep in mind the time constraint, the space constraint, which is very, very important. And specifically, what is the question? If the question is only about the dimensions, then you can just figure out one of them and use the Sylvester's law. But if the question says find a basis, then you cannot use this shortcut. And then the weightage of the question will also automatically go up in this case. The second part of this, find A, is very simple now. Since we have found out the entire null space, we have now figured out the entire null space. Anything which is of this kind is in null space. So in particular, you can check 1, 1, 0, 0 will also belong to the null space. This also belongs to the null space. Their sum will also belong to null space. So you have figured out so many elements which belong to null space. The question only said find a matrix which maps to null matrix. So that means you have to find at least one A, which could be this, this, or any other matrix which belongs to them. Okay? Okay. So now let's discuss question number 2A. Question number 2A was evaluate this integral. There was an integral that had to be evaluated. It was 0 to 1 tan inverse of 1 minus 1 by x dx. Okay? There are two very basic reviews required for it. If you don't know those reviews, then this question can be very, very difficult. The first is that if you have a to b fx dx, then by properties of definite integrals, and you can also prove this, is a to b f of a plus b minus x dx. A to b fx dx is same as a to b f of a plus b minus x dx. I'll attach a proof of this at the end of the video, but you should try it yourself also first, okay? This is very, very crucial for your understanding. In fact, this is same as, then this question is going to boil down to be same as successive integrations. Like, you will call this integral as I, you simplify it, you get another form, and then you add the two equations. That will come only because of this review. We'll see how, but this is very, very important. The second is a formula which again is school level. What is tan inverse x plus tan inverse y? What is tan inverse x plus tan inverse y? This is tan inverse of x plus y upon 1 minus xy. Okay, so we need both these reviews in order to understand. And then this question honestly is not going to be tough provided you know both these. Okay, so let's see how we're going to proceed. Let us call the given integral as I. So 0 to 1 tan inverse 1 minus 1 by x dx. Now we generally don't like things which are 1 minus 1 by x kinds. Like, what I mean is that you can take an LCM here and get a simplified version of this. This is 0 to 1 tan inverse of, if I take the LCM, what does this become? X minus 1 upon x dx. Okay, so it's x minus 1 x dx. Now apply the first review, that means apply this property of definite integrals. It says that you can replace x by a plus b minus x, where a and b are the limits of this. So what does this boil down to? The limits will remain same, 0 to 1 tan inverse of, instead of x, this property tells us instead of x, replace x by a plus b, which is 1 plus 0 minus x. Replace x by 1 minus x, and the integral does not change, it remains the same. So instead of x, I am now putting 1 minus x dx. Okay, this is by this property. It is not by substitution or anything, it is by using this property. What does this boil down to? This becomes tan inverse of, so 0 to 1 tan inverse of minus x upon 1 minus x dx, which is what? 0 to 1 tan inverse. If I use this minus sign with the denominator, I get x upon x minus 1 dx. So what are the things to take away from here? The important things is that I called this integral as I. You see, this is nothing but I, and it has boiled down to this. So this is also I. Both these equations stand for I, but they're different. Here I am saying I is tan inverse given question x minus 1 upon x, whereas here it has become the reciprocal of this. See, it is x upon x minus 1 dx. Okay, so this is also I, this is also I. It's the same thing. So what do we do after this? We add the two equations. So I'll just copy down what we had. So if you add up the two equations, you're going to get 2 times I 0 to 1 tan inverse of, what was the given question? X minus 1 upon x dx plus 0 to 1 tan inverse of, it had become the reciprocal, x upon x minus 1 dx. Let's check it again. It is x upon x minus 1. Okay. Okay, so this is adding the two equations, you get this. Now, you know that if there is a to b f and a to b g, this is same as a to b of f plus g. Since the limits are same in both, I can combine this integral into a single integral. I'll get tan inverse of x minus 1 upon x plus tan inverse of x upon x minus 1 dx. Now this brings us to the second review, which is the formula of tan inverse something plus tan inverse something. So what does this become? 0 to 1 tan inverse of, what was the formula? You're going to a tan inverse of a plus b. So it's x minus 1 upon x plus x upon x minus 1 divided by 1 minus x minus 1 upon x multiplied with x upon x minus 1. I'm just applying the formula of tan inverse A plus tan inverse B, and there is a dx here. Now I know we can simplify this, but for a second first look at the denominator. You see x and x cancels, x minus 1 and x minus 1 cancels. So this term is becoming a 1, and 1 minus 1 is becoming a 0 in the denominator. So this is becoming infinity. All you have to now, this is very, very important, that this is becoming infinity, and usually everybody would just write infinity. So usually what will happen is from here you will get 0 to 1 tan inverse of, numerator is whatever, the denominator is becoming 0. So this is becoming tan inverse of infinity is what the usual answer will be. Now it can be infinity or it can also be minus infinity. What does this depend on? It depends on the sign of the numerator. If the numerator is positive, then it becomes tan inverse infinity. If the numerator is negative, then it becomes this. And the answer in both cases is going to be a difference of minus sign. So it will be either tan inverse infinity is pi by 2, whereas tan inverse of minus infinity is minus pi by 2. So the word of caution here is figure out the sign of the numerator here. How do we do that? You see, if you go back to the original question, the limits were given to be 0, 1. Whether you take open interval 0, 1 or closed, it doesn't matter, but the thing is that x belongs to this interval, because this is where the integration is happening. Integration is happening from 0 to 1 with respect to x, so x belongs to 0, 1. So what can you say about x minus 1? If x is a number between 0 and 1, and if you subtract 1 from it, then it's going to become negative. If you divide by x, it's positive, so this term is negative, and then so is this term. So it's negative plus negative, therefore numerator here is negative, and therefore it boils down to, if you come back to this, it will be negative sign minus of something upon 0. So this is actually not tan inverse infinity, it's not this, it is actually just tan inverse of minus infinity. So what is tan inverse of minus infinity? It will be minus pi by 2. This is not the answer because this is 2 times I. So if 2 times I is nothing but minus pi by 2, then our integral I is nothing but minus pi by 4. So if you look at the final answer, it's going to be I is nothing but minus of pi by 4. So if you don't pay attention to the sign of the numerator, your answer can come out to be pi by 4, which is, of course, it's a numerical question, so you're not going to be given any marks for it, okay? Hardly 1 or 2 marks. But if you want full marks, you have to now look at the, so this was very, very crucial in order to figure out what the exact answer of this question is going to be, okay?